Got it? All right, good morning, everybody, and thanks for being there today for this Transport Innovation Talk. I am Marc Juel. I'm very pleased to moderate this discussion this morning. I must correct a small mistake which was in the announcement. I guess it still presents me as sector manager for transport at the World Bank, which I have been for the last 8 years, but things happened. I retired in December from the bank, so I'm just now an independent consultant. But still, I didn't forget all I did in the bank, so I suppose I should be equipped enough to handle this discussion. So now I hope you all recover well from the presidency reception yesterday. As you know, you have a few hours ahead of you to get prepared for the gala dinner. And then you'll be fully equipped to go back home and tell everybody how exhausting this event is. So we'll go ahead with this talk this morning. We have 4 presenters. And the first 2, actually, Jim Atanasiou and Hans Arby, being the ITF 2015 Innovation Award winners. We can start by a round of applause to start with this. And of course, this is not to withdraw anything from our 2 other presenters who actually very interesting stuff to share with us as well. So we'll get started actually with Jim. Jim Atanasiou is a general manager for business improvement at the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation, which is responsible for operating and maintaining the water navigation infrastructure leading into the North American Great Lakes. So Jim is responsible for identifying innovation and technologies that can be implemented to improve efficiencies across the business. And in particular, he's worked on the modernization of the seaway locks through the use of vacuum technology and all stuff. I'm sure he will tell us a little more about it. So please, Jim, without further ado, go ahead. And just a point of order, we'll go through the 4 presentations in a row, and then we'll open up the discussion for questions after the 4 presentations have been delivered. So please, Jim, the floor is yours.
Video. So I'd like to start by thanking all of you for joining us today, and I'd really like to thank the ITF for inviting us to speak and showcase some of the stuff we've done at some of the work we've done at the St. Lawrence Seaway. Wonderful event so far, so it's great. So the story I'd like to tell you today is really about we're just going to make sure we get it projected. It's not showing. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'll start by talking to you a little bit about the Great Lakes Seaway System, I think. And basically, this is the heartland to getting into the North American Great Lakes. As you can see, it's a 3,700 kilometer waterway, and it's key to getting all the cargo in and out of the North American market. Just a little bit of a note is that this puts a little bit of perspective of what it consists of. It's 15 locks, 13 are Canadian locks and 2 are US. And one of the key elements here is that there's a total lift of 168 meters from sea level. And what's of real importance is that we actually bypass Niagara Falls, which most of you hopefully know. So that's what the locks at the Welland Canal do. Before we start talking about the innovations at the Seaway, one of the key things we have to talk about is the innovations that the users have been going through. So over the in the last 4 years and heading up into the next 2 years, there's going to be a total of $7 billion of investment, and $1 billion of that is actually on the assets that use the Seaway, the new ships, which are very, very modern, ultra fuel efficient, and basically take use and maximize the use of the infrastructure we have. And I'm going to touch a little bit more about that in a second. So this is basically a little slide that shows some of the innovations we've done at the Seaway. I'm going to talk to you about three in particular. The first one is basically I'm just going to open up the presentation here. So basically, the first one is the vessel self-spotting, which is on the bottom left of the corner. So in order to set up for what we wanted to do, which was basically modernize our operating process, which is how we process vessels. Vessels basically come into our locks, they throw their lines over, we attach them, and then we lower or raise them. One of the things we needed to do is give them the ability to now position themselves in the right position in the lock so that we can engage what the vacuum technology that we spoke about. In order to do that, we've introduced what we call self-spotting, and what that is basically a display and lasers, and the laser basically scans the vessel coming into the locks, and what that does is it gives a readout to the captains to the exact position they need to stop at. Now these positions are customized for each vessel, because each vessel has to stop, you know, in a different range so that we can engage the units. The second very important development as well is on the top right-hand corner, which is the 3D navigation, and this is very interesting. Our Seaway was built one portion was built 75 years ago and the other one 50 years ago. Our locks are 25 meters wide, and as such we want to maximize the full use of them. The vessels that come into our system, we maximize the width. We also want to maximize the water depth that they can take advantage of. What we've developed here is what we call the draft information system, and what that does basically, it allows a vessel to come in equipped with a certain computer on board, and what it does is it takes the bathymetric surveys we've done of our canal, and as the captain is approaching on the waterway, they know to adjust their speed so that they can make sure they clear the minimum requirement distance below. What happens is, for the captain, what they see is they see red ahead, and they know that immediately they have to basically slow down so that they can reduce their squat and basically be higher up. This technology allows a single vessel to bring in up to 400 tons more cargo, which is significant when you're trying to maximize every inch. And the last, the hands-free mooring technology, which is the next slide, and I'll talk more in detail about, is the one that we won the award for, is basically vacuum technology that eliminates the use of lines, and we now will be able to attach and process a vessel without any manual intervention. And we're going to eventually move all that to a remote control. One of the things that when we talk about innovation, none of this is even possible without the people that work at the Seaway, but more importantly, along with those people are all our stakeholders. The Seaway is, I touched base on it earlier, is a binational waterway, and there's a lot of government agencies, states and provinces that it touches on, as well as different stakeholders like pilots and the companies that work off the shores. So in order to do all that and to introduce this type of innovation, it was very, very important that everyone was involved on it. The contribution of our people and our stakeholders was of an unbelievable magnitude. This is, I have a video later that'll just show you in operation, but this is the hands-free mooring system. So what you see there is basically each of our locks by 2018 will be equipped with 3 double units like this. And what they do is they basically attach to the vessel and move up and down as the vessel is raised or lowered. This was developed jointly with Cavitec, which is the manufacturer of the equipment. And when we talk about innovation, what's interesting is usually we all think about these groundbreaking technologies. This is a good example of something that was out there. It is used in ports, but was not adapted to a very dynamic environment like a lock. So we raise a ship anywhere between 15, it could take as low as 10 and as much as 30 minutes to fill a lock or empty a lock. And this required a lot of modification or upgrades. One of the things, just quickly touching on, is we had to adapt it with, work with Cavitec to use hoists to lower and raise it. One of the early generations that we had a floating tank which floated with the water, and we found that wasn't as successful. As you can imagine, something like this is required a lot of prototyping, and one of the key elements in us being able to innovate in the environment we were at required a lot of stage gating. So we took baby steps. This project has started in 2006 and has just come to fruition now. And in between, we've had 4 generations of this equipment working with our manufacturer to be able to come to what we have today. So it started with a floating tank, 1 unit, and now we have 3 double units, which is sufficient enough to process the vessel. The innovation during part of the Seaway and innovating and putting this type of technology to the Seaway was one thing. What was just an interesting and a wonderful story to tell was throughout the process, we got a lot of people involved. And one of the two separate groups had significant contribution on this. One is some of the users said to us, we really would feel that if we can get this is an excellent technology, we can use it, but we really want it to, we were hoping it can come out and extend a little bit so it can save us time to try and get next to the wall. And what that statement in one meeting led to was the fact that, as you can see there in the third picture, is these units now can go out 2 meters to capture a vessel. It's a small item that reduces a lot of time, especially for the narrower vessels. So this was important because it came out of the user's needs right on the spot. And it's something we were very fortunate enough to be agile enough to be able to implement. The second thing is that those pads actually swivel. They swivel up to 5 degrees, which was a requirement from another set of users, that the pilots, which ended up bringing to our attention that when they come in and they have to slow down, that the vessel sometimes twists in the lock, and therefore being able to swivel would be a great advantage. So again, innovation amongst implicating the stakeholders led to a significant improvement in design. The last thing is when we, not the last thing, the first of many I would say, but one of the things, the additional thing is that when we introduced this technology, we had in mind that we recognized that we work under harsh conditions in the winter. And one of the things we realized that there would be a finite time that we were probably, the unit would be inoperable, not inoperable, but in a sense, stop using the units, especially when it gets very cold. We immediately found out, and we got a drive from our people that use the equipment that really liked the effectiveness of it, and said to us, is there any way you can get it to work even into the season, into the first week of January, which is sometimes a situation, which is very difficult. So the equipment has to be basically able to work from minus 30 degrees Celsius to plus 30 degrees Celsius. And that rubber that attaches to the vessel was key in doing that, because the vessels are not mirror finishes, as you can imagine. They have waves in them, they have bars in them, and one of the things we worked very hard with our supplier was to make sure that we can get different compounds. And right now, I'm happy to say that we know that we can operate into temperatures of minus 20 plus with some new, again, all this based on the feedback we got from our operators. And I touched a little bit previously on the situation about us being able to extend. An added bonus of that being able to go out 2 meters is that previously, the vessels that used to use our system used to be scraped up against the wall. That's just the way it was. The cables used to pull you tight against the wall. And we found that the ocean trade really had this was an issue, because they didn't want to take their assets out of commission to go paint them every two years. So the added benefit of this technology and this innovation right now is that we could actually keep the vessel away from the wall and it allows for less contact and happier customers. I don't think I've simplified what we do, but this is a slide that sort of, to me, speaks greatly to the complexity of a simple process. We think of vessels coming into a lock, either raise or lifting. This here is the lock in the Montreal region. It's the one that the first lock you come into the system. What I'd like to point your attention in the back, that's the city of Montreal. You've got two bridges on the right and on the left, and those bridges are what allow ships into either end of the lock. Those bridges also happen to carry trains and passengers. So rush hour in Montreal, and us trying to get a vessel in, as you can imagine, it has to be very well coordinated. And if you look at the vessel that's in the lock, it's not the best picture, but I can tell you it's taking advantage of every single square centimeter that we have in the lock. It's filling the lock in its entire length and width. And the reason I thought it was interesting to show this is because this is why we innovate. The Seaway was never designed to be used to this level when it was built, but today we are using it to this level. We're processing vessels quicker, and when we talk about processing and where we want to go with this, coordination and logistics is going to be another layer that we have to innovate on, how we're going to go about figuring out, coordinating the traffic of the rush hour, coordinating the traffic of the trains to ensure that we maximize effectiveness of the system. And I talked to you a little bit about winter. This is the reality of winter, when we have to deal with very, very cold temperatures, and sometimes we're very fortunate. It's a mild winter and we don't really have too much to worry about, but the last two winters have been a challenge. And when the -20 set in early in December, we have convoys of ships going through, and this is in the open channel. But as you can imagine, in our locks, what we've been working on and what we've sort of implemented over the years is incredible. Bubbling to make sure we can keep the ice out of our locks, a curtain that sort of allows the ship to come through and push the ice to the side. I could tell you we have heaters on the coins or on our gates to make sure that ice doesn't build. And if the gates cannot open 1 inch, it makes a big difference for the vessel to come in. So we keep innovating. And one of the last slides I want to talk to you about, this is the bypass to the Niagara Falls. They're stepped locks. And the challenge moving forward for us is we have to keep innovating with our users and our constructors, because installing the units you saw on these lock walls, in that center wall, in the middle, is where we're going to be installing it. And it really is a challenge to get them installed in the middle of, in a 2-month window that we have to do this work. So we have to look at innovative ways to go ahead and do that. And eventually what we want to really get to, we want to get to the fact that we're already there. We have 2 control rooms, 1 in each region. And what we do is we operate the bridges and all of the scheduling of traffic. So what the hands-free mooring now permits us to do, the vacuum technology, is to expand these centers. So we will be operating, our objective is to be operating remotely in a controlled environment like this, all our locks and infrastructure. And what that allows is it really enhances the work atmosphere and environment for our operators. I just have, in closing, I just wanted to quickly run a little video, and I'm gonna just quickly. So what I wanted, as you're watching this, I wanted just to finalize a couple of things. In driving innovation, there's a couple of key takeaways that we learned. The one is that the key to innovation is technology is important, and we drive to implement and develop, but it's actually people that made the difference. People in the Seaway and the stakeholders that got involved with us from the beginning that actually helped develop this to where it is today. And I can't speak enough about our suppliers and manufacturer, Cavitec, that made this possible as well, because without their help in working jointly on this, it would be impossible. The second thing is that to get innovation, you need room to breathe, which sometimes when you're trying to manage risk, and keep in mind that our waterway is 99.5% reliable. And with that comes a lot of very focused individuals. And in order to provide the room to take chances and to risk, that's very important in driving innovation. And the third thing is, sometimes we don't have to, rewrite the script. Taking something that exists is very, very feasible as well, and then modifying it and bringing it to your environment is great as well. And actually, I'll go to the final slide. This is just an example that shows a little bit about the thing. And in keeping with the theme of the conference, I just wanted to know we're always open. Let everyone know we're always open for tourism as well at the Seaway, with the cruise ships that come in during the summer months. So we're hoping to be able to use the technology to attach to large cruise ships like this as well. So that's the end, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for this impressive presentation. Actually, you reminded me of the very first study tour I ever took, which brought me to the Southern Seaway back in 1977. So thank you for making me feel younger. Okay, so we'll go to our second presenter today, Hans Arby. Hans is the Chief Executive Officer of UbiGo, a subscription service providing everyday transport for households in Sweden, allowing them mobility without the need of a car. And this service combines public transport, car sharing, rental car service, taxi, and even bicycles. So we are eager to learn more about it. So, Hans, please.
Yes. Since everybody else is having a video, we also included a video. It's a short version of marketing and we used for recruiting test customers. Yeah. Sound.
Join us in our development of making an easy commuting service. We call this service UbiGo, and our goal is to make it easier and cheaper to take advantage of many commuting options. This service works like a digital punch card for the time spent using multiple forms of transportation, all in one app, all in one flexible subscription. From home to the office, you take the bus, maybe a rental bike for sunny days, a car from the car sharing to drop off the kids at practice, and a rental car for the weekends, a taxi home from the pub. It provides both personal service and, in case of severe delays or mishaps, UbiGo sends a taxi. It's a commute that avoids all the time-consuming and costly drawbacks of owning a car. Further benefits of taking the environmentally friendly travel options are home delivery of groceries. UbiGo is a service developed by Project GoSmart, which is a collaboration between these partners. UbiGo has been tested in 70 households during the last 6 months with positive results. We are now preparing for the next phase. Follow us at www.ubigo.me.
That's it. This was a very short introduction. I will go back and start a little bit more of the big picture. That one, yeah. And that's about the challenge of climate change and also building sustainable and attractive cities. And that is something you can do by technology, but it also includes behavior of people. And when it comes to behavior, you can either use carrots, different kinds of subsidies and campaigns. You can use sticks, like road tolls and different regulation, but you can also use grease. The grease is making it easier for people to do the right thing, supplying them with a good service that will help them not use as much car. And also, if you look at the city, I mean, the city has a need of limit the use of car and also parking of car. But the households and companies, they have a need to get their everyday life going. So in this gap, you can bridge that with a service. And this gap is also a business opportunity and an area for innovation. So if you look at the private car, you can see I'm from Sweden, even though it's a Chinese company now. You can look at the car as a mobility insurance, which is quite good. It's very flexible. It's always there when you need it. You know how to use it. You can go everywhere with the car. It's a very good mobility insurance. But it is costly, lots of fixed costs, repairs. It's complicated in a big city to get rid of it when you want to park it. But this also means that if you want to compete with car ownership, you need to have a service that offers something at least as good. And offering something as good or better always has to do with saving time, saving money, saving mental energy, and also supporting personal image. And then, I mean, typically you talk about the multimodal trip, getting people from A to B is important. But it's not enough. It's not about getting people from A to B, it's getting people, the whole households, from morning to evening, from Monday to Sunday, from January to December. Because if you feel that you need a car for certain errands, enough of errands, you will buy a car. And if you have bought a car, you're stupid if you don't use it, because 50–60% is fixed cost by owning a car. So if you own a car, you will use it even for trips where there are better alternatives. So this is about not getting from A to B. It's about manage everyday life with at least as good today without having to own a car. And it's also about making money, because if a lot of these projects that are funded by public sectors, they wanted to test ideas and demo, do piloting. But if you don't have a business model and you don't know how to run a sustainable business on a service, it will not happen. You will get answers that people liked it, but it will never happen. And there is money in this. If you look at people paying like 30 to 40 euros for using the mobile phone, but they have a mobility budget that is perhaps 300 or 400 euros a month, so it's a lot of money. So the idea is what you can do, what we thought of, what if you can procure everyday travel in volume, repackage it and deliver it in a much easier way. So it's kind of a Spotify for everyday travel, or charter company for everyday travel. So if we say to the household, give us your mobility budget, we will go and negotiate and get a good deal for you, and we will keep a little bit of the money. So the thing is that the money lies in making it easier doing the repackage. It's not about integrating information. You can't make any money on information. It's not about technology, because that's the simple part. It's about doing this package good enough for the customers. We found that the best way of mimic the car ownership and also have a logic model for this is subscription, because it's something you are used to. And it's kind of, you know what it will cost you every month, but still very flexible compared to car ownership, because you can stop the subscription whenever you want without having to sell a car. So this is a little bit how it works. So you can view it as a mobile subscription, but instead of having a number of gigabytes of surf, number of minutes of calls, or number of SMS, this is a number of days in public transport, hours using car sharing and so on. So it's very similar to mobile subscription. Different is when you haven't used up everything, you can save for the next month, and it's easy to top up when you run out of number of days in public transport and so on. It's a subscription that is based on households, so everybody in the household can use from their account what we call a digital punch card. So me and my wife, we had 30 days in public transport, so one morning I take a day off. I did a day of public transport in my phone, and my wife do the same thing. Everything is accessed through the smartphone, and then you get access to all the different services, and this is the companies we used during the test. And then we also we did a lot of things with the price models, making it more easier for the customers also. And then we added 24/7 support. We also, with the travel warranty, instead of having to call a cab, get the receipt and send it in to the public transport company, you just push the button and we send a taxi, and we took care of the paperwork also. And also we had a system for getting bonus. If you choose the more sustainable transport, you get the bonus points that you can use for movie tickets and so on. So this was the idea, and then the question is, do the customers agree that it's a good service, that it's easy to use, that it's price-worthy? And since this is kind of a new concept, even though you've been talking about combined mobility for a long time, it's not something you can do a typical market research on. You can't go out in the street and say, this is something that you probably don't really understand. How much are you willing to pay? You don't get any real answers. So you need to get a proof of concept and test it for real. Either you have a lot of money, you're inside a big company, or you run it as a publicly funded project. And what you get by doing that is also that you get access to the public actors that you wouldn't have if you were inside a company. Public transport operators is very, very important, and the city, and you can work with them in that kind of project. So that was what we did. We had a GoSmart project in Gothenburg, run by Lindholmen Science Park, with partners like Volvo, Västervik, the city of Gothenburg, and we also have Chalmers. So we have this test is thoroughly evaluated by Chalmers in details, a lot of technical papers written on it even. So we tested this on 70 paying households for half a year. The average subscription were about 130 euros, different mixtures, because it's very flexible how the subscription you could choose. We were able to cover a little bit over 20 households for putting away their car, so we paid for the fixed cost. No one dropped out during this test period, and still, I mean, it was a beta version. We did everything in half a year. 80% said at the end of the test that they would like to continue use the service, continue being customers with the system as it was. 17% said, well, if you can fix, so can a card at my summer house for a month in the summer and so on, and 3% said no. And also interesting why they liked it. At the beginning of the test, the biggest reason for joining was curiosity. And also what we were able to do, we managed to get the early adopters on board, not the pioneers, not the, you can see the environment thing. They were curious. They had high demand on just paying what they used, integrity of data and everything. So they were early adopters. So these were in the beginning. And in the end, it was convenience. More important than economy. Convenience was the main reason. And that's good if you want to make some money, also that convenience is more important than economy. They also said that it became easier to pay, they got control of their mobility cost, they get access to more modes of transport. And these were the top of mind words describing the service that they told us in a survey. This is very good. They also changed behavior. They changed mode of transport, planned their travel more. They used more car sharing, more public transport, more rental car, more taxi. And also afterwards the test, 50% said that they would keep on with a new behavior. And then you can say, well, that is good. But then you can run a campaign, because then kind of get over the edge. But 50% said, 30% that yes, I will continue with my new behavior if it will be as easy as it has been, if the service would prevail. And 20% said no, because the service won't be there. So the service creates value. It's a value of being the middleman, because we compete with car ownership, but we also compete with everybody taking care of the mobility mix by themselves. But almost 50% said it was a value having someone in between. So this means that we are kind of obligated to do something of this. So what we want to do is get this running in other big cities together with local partners, because we think you have to have a local partner. We are working with Ericsson to use their mobile phone platform as a mobility operator platform, which looks promising. We are cooperating with the Finnish initiative. As you heard, Finland is massive on this mobility as a service. And maybe we can do a NMT GSM story, a Nordic initiative. And thing is interesting, if you look at like a franchising concept with local partners, then if you have the same platform, or at least same standard in different cities, I can go to Leipzig or Rio de Janeiro or Paris using my Swedish subscription and going in rental car, taxi, and public transport. And when it comes to public transport, since at least some policymakers here, perhaps, a message, because public transport will always be the base of a service like this. The bulk of the travels, not the money perhaps, but the bulk of the travels will be public transport. Public transport is typically a monopoly. It's typically subsidized. And what we need to set up this in different cities is to unlock public transport, making it possible to be a reseller of travel, make it possible to repackage public transport. Because what we will do then is that we will induce innovation in this kind of traditional sector with a lot of different new modes and things in between public transport and private transport. So that's a very big message. And in Gothenburg, Västtrafik is doing a pre-commercial procurement with the aim of having a concession procurement. So that might be a good model. But making the public transport operator realizing that they're part of the ecosystem and they need to be open up for integrators such as UbiGo. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans. Thanks for this interesting insight on behavior change in mobility. I would say that starting with curiosity, ending with convenience is a pretty good achievement at this point. So hopefully we'll carry on. And we will carry on ourselves here with Sarah Hunter. Mrs. Hunter is head of public policy at Google X. And she has been in this position since August 2013. As you may know, Google X is a team of inventors, engineers that applies audacious thinking and technology to big problems for positive social change, which is a pretty nice formulation, I must say. So Sarah will talk to us about various activities that she is involved in. She actually is doing a number of intriguing things, self-driving cars, to unmanned aerial vehicles, to balloon-powered internet. I will stop here and leave you to carry on. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. We were asked to come today to talk about transportation innovation that excites us and we think is sort of powerful for the future. And I have to say, my first thought was this. This is a London transport card. And when I was 16 and growing up in London, this truly revolutionized my life. I had previously spent my childhood being wholly dependent upon my parents and their car. And then all of a sudden, age 16, my life opened up and I had freedom, never before imagined, thanks to London Transport. But this is true, I think, for all of us, in that transportation and the machines that we rely upon to transport us around have provided freedom, quality of life and opportunities that we couldn't imagine life without, frankly. whether it be individuals who have to get access to jobs, or cities and countries that have to get access to markets. Transportation and the machines that drive that really underpin that opportunity. And I think yesterday Minister Dobrin kind of said the same thing. It really is the fuel of our personal and our national economies. But it's not without cost. The freedom that transportation and our vehicles have provided come with problems. You know, whether it be the dependence on infrastructure. You know, we were hearing earlier about the reliance upon the ports and the waterways, but also our airports, our railroads. It's expensive. You know, transportation is often very expensive for families. It's the second biggest cost for families in the UK. And it's often dirty and dangerous and dominates our environment. You know, I don't think any of us in this room would think that this doesn't come at a price, this freedom we've got. The good news, I think, is that technology can be part of the solution. And actually, I think the transportation industry has always been fans of using new technology, whether it be the wheel, the yoke, the electric battery, autopilot. You know, there's always been an enthusiasm for taking on the new opportunities that technology provide. We've found that at Google. We've built a self-driving vehicle in partnership with manufacturers here in Germany and in the US. And similarly with our UAV project, we want to work with manufacturers and are talking to people across the world about building things together. My own view is that actually I think software offers really great opportunities, the really great technological breakthrough, and specifically automation. Now, I'm often asked, what does automation mean to me? And I guess this is it. This is our self-driving vehicle that we've just manufactured. Now, the kind of Hollywood version of automation is often not the truth. The robot cars that you see in, you know, the Jetsons or Terminator or Star Wars, that's not really what automation means to me. Actually, automation has been used in technology in transportation for decades, you know, whether it be automatic braking systems or autopilot. It's gradually been integrated into our vehicles over many years. But I think the great breakthrough that we're about to come to is the combination of high-tech sensors, huge data processing abilities, and smart software to create fully autonomous vehicles like this. Fully autonomous, for me and for Google, means a vehicle, car or plane, where you can say your destination and the human has no interaction at all in the driving or piloting process. It can take you to A to B without you ever being involved. And in fact, it's so autonomous, it doesn't require steering wheel or brake pedal. Now, the question, I guess, is why is this so transformative? Why is this the great breakthrough that we are so excited about? And I think this is the number one reason. This slide shows you that the majority cause of death for young men under 35 in the US is road accidents. 94% of road accidents are down to human error. It's not the car that breaks, it's the human that doesn't brake. And, you know, similarly in aeroplanes, you know, human error is the major cause of accident. Now, why are we so confident that autonomous vehicles can make a difference? Well, they never get drunk, they never get tired, they never get distracted by the text message they just got. We're pretty confident we can make a difference to these sort of statistics. Now, we have to be realistic. We're not going to remove all accidents from the street. There will be some accidents. But we have to keep in mind the big picture here. And when 3,500 people die every single day on our roads, we think this is a technology worth investing in. Secondly, we think this can really improve the quality of life in our urban settings. This shows you what life looks like in many of our cities now. And it's easy to forget how much our urban settings have been built and informed by the vehicles we've built to transport ourselves around them. You know, you've got bollards to protect pedestrians from runaway cars. You've got enormous amounts of very precious land given over to car parks. You have suburban malls because people want to be able to drive to do their shopping. And you have airports that often blight the quality of life for the villages that are placed around them. And you just have to imagine, what if we did use UAVs for delivering goods? would that enable local shops to compete for the first time with malls? Would that revive our cities and our quality of life in the city centre? If you used aerial delivery, surely that would reduce the number of cars on our streets. And what would you do with the land that we currently use for parking? What would this precious new land be able to be used for? Now, I think there's a lot of people who hope that self-driving vehicles in particular can improve congestion. And that's not necessarily true. Sorry to bring you down a bit, but the reality is if you were to apply self-driving technology to every single car on the streets today, you wouldn't reduce the number of cars on the road. And actually the OECD's research that I think Philip is going to talk about does demonstrate some of those challenges. But I do think this technology offers us some opportunities, government and society, for shared usage that have not been provided before. So the City Mobile 2 project that the European Commission has been funding, that's looking at building an autonomous bus. Uber has invested in a project with Carnegie Mellon University to provide self-driving cars for their fleet. And ourselves at Google and Amazon are investing in a UAV delivery platform. So in the words of the tech industry, we're creating sort of autonomous delivery platforms that I think will, in the long run, give hope to this ambition to reduce congestion on our streets. And finally, I think autonomous technology enables a sort of freedom and equality that we have never before imagined. Millions of people could benefit from this. This is a man called Steve Mahn, who is a Californian who was one of the first people we invited to go in one of our self-driving car prototypes a few years ago. And we said to Steve, we have this new amazing technology. What do you want to do with it? And he said, can I go to the dry cleaners, please? And it really brought home to us how what we think is a sort of transformative space-age technology actually enables some people to live a life that you and I take for granted. And this is true for many, many other people. 80% of the over 65s in the US live in car-dependent suburbs or rural settings. What happens to their quality of life when they have the car keys taken away from them? 40% of disabled people have jobs. Think about the price they pay every single day just trying to engage in normal living. Broader than that, I think there are new freedoms currently unimaginable that autonomous technology will make available to all of us. What difference will it make to where we choose to live when the challenge of commuting is no longer such a chore? What if we use the time we currently spent driving to do something else? Would we, do meetings from the car? Would we sleep from the car? What difference does it make to our productivity? And actually, what difference does it make to our day-to-day living and stress when we don't have to drive or sit in traffic in a stressful way for 2 hours a day? In conclusion, I don't think what I'm describing today or the kind of vehicles we're building really are ordinary cars or planes. I think they're whole new mobility options. I don't think we're going to be cannibalizing the existing vehicle market, but creating new ones. And that's why we're so excited about working with partners in this country and around the world on this kind of vision. But I think we need wider society to get involved too, because we haven't got all the answers. We know that we can build these vehicles, but we don't know how people want to use them. We think that we can improve safety, but we just don't know yet by how much. And we think it's exciting to be in a vehicle without a human, but will some people find it really scary? These are all questions that we've yet to answer. So we can encourage everyone to get involved because I think the benefits here really are worth fighting for. I'm going to finish with a video in the tradition of this panel. This is actually, we built this prototype vehicle and we had a very early prototype you're going to see in this video. And we wanted to know what would real people do with it. So we invited some of our neighbours, literally our neighbours of the team, to come and take part. And this is what happened.
Today, we have something extra special for you guys, and you guys will be some of the first people outside of our team and outside of Google to ever drive you.
Oh, there it is. Oh, isn't that cute?
it was a big decision for us to go and start building our purpose-built vehicles for this. And really, they're prototype vehicles. They were a chance for us to explore what does it really mean to have a self-driving vehicle. But in the small amount of time we've been working on it, we have functional prototypes, and it's exciting.
It's really cool. It was like really kind of a space age experience.
We're like leaders. Yeah. You sit, relax, you don't do nothing. It knows when you need to stop, it knows when you need to go.
It actually rides better than my own car.
Yes.
What she really liked was that it slowed down before it went around a curve and then accelerated in the curve. She's always trying to get me to do it that way.
That's the way I learned it myself.
So if I had a self-driving car, I could spend more time hanging out with my kids or helping them with their homework, even just tending to them, finding out how their day was and not having to wait till you get home and have dinner and all that. So it'll be good.
Human feeling of it is very well engineered and it is very smooth. There's nothing that makes you feel the least bit threatened. It's impressive. I'm totally in love with this whole concept.
Our lives are made up of lots and lots of little things. And a lot of those little things for most people have to do with getting from place to place in order to connect and do things, be with people, go places that they need to go and do things. And so there's a big part of my life that's missing, and there's a big part of my life that a self-driving vehicle would bring back to me.
This is the first step for us, and it's really exciting to see the progress we've made. The opportunity for people to just move around and not worry about it, it's going to be incredibly empowering and incredibly powerful for people.
I love this!
A lot, Sarah. Very, very impressive indeed. Also, I must say I'm kind of sorry you discounted Star Wars innovation potential, but anyway, so be it. All right, so let's go to our last presentation by Philippe Christ. So Philippe Christ belongs to the International Transport Forum. So I guess if in the Tour de France jargon, we'll call him the regional guy today. So he will actually give us maybe an overview of various research being carried out by the ITF within the OECD, since Philippe is responsible for coordinating several international research initiatives amongst ITF members. Many projects focusing on big data, automated vehicles, sharing economy, improving cycling safety, and a lot of other things. So, Philippe, please tell us about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Marc. I think what you'll see in my presentation is that there's a bit of continuity, especially in the last three presentations. I'll present some of the insights that we've developed at the ITF on work that we've recently carried out, looking on how the convergence of shared vehicles and self-driving vehicles, what the impacts might be in the cities in a unnamed future. We don't put a time on it. But we do wanted to see what the range of impacts would be and what the scope of the impacts might potentially be. And before I start talking about that, I think there's a bit of context setting that's necessary, because we have to remind ourselves, why is it that we're looking at these technologies? Why are we looking at these changes in mobility patterns that could be possible? And in particular, this context setting has to do with both the urban and the human. Now, I don't have to tell you that cities are massively popular. More than 50% of the global population lives in these cities. More than 70% of wealth production takes place in cities, almost an equal share of greenhouse gas emissions. Cities concentrate both access and opportunity. But it's equally important to remember that 30% of the world's urban areas are comprised of low-income informal settlements, favelas, shantytowns, slums, and other marginal residential or commercial spaces. People crowd into cities because both for the rich and for the poor, cities are formidable economic accelerants. They build on the access to labor and jobs on the one hand, and also the access to creativity and ideas on the other. But cities are also spaces, and when you take away the space allocated to buildings, you're left with the latticework of space allocated to mobility and transport. Though these transport and mobility are important functions in our cities, they are not the only function of the space between the buildings. And the cities that we get when we focus only on how well that space moves vehicles around can be rather inhospitable places for humans. And this would be unfortunate, because the strength of our societies, the strength of our cities, rest upon the people that are at the heart of both. Before speaking about transport in the cities and towns of the 21st century and some of the transformative changes that we've heard about already, we need to talk first about the cities and the towns of the 21st century and of all the trips that we'll make there. 400 trillion trips. These are the number of trips that we expect the human species will make cumulatively going out to 2050, as we grow to 9 billion people. 54 trillion of these trips will be new trips, trips that we don't make today that are linked to population growth. 94% of these trips will take place in emerging economies, and almost every single new trip will take place in an urban setting. These trips will accompany population growth, and as we look to the recent past and to the near future, we see that not only will the 21st century be the urban century, it will also be the Asian, African, and Latin American century. Now, this population growth has been accompanied by a rapid increase in the built-up area of many countries. Here, for example, 10 years of urban growth in the Yellow River Delta around Shanghai in China between 2000 and 2010. This growth in China, but everywhere, will pose formidable challenges for urban governance and sustainability if we do not become more creative at better handling the access and mobility conundrum in our cities, in places like on the streets of Jakarta, like, unfortunately this is my own experience, in the Paris metro, or even on the bicycle tracks of the Netherlands and Denmark. Thanks for the picture. So in our study, we decided to look at a potentially disruptive future urban transport pathway that could improve access in our cities, and that starts with this fact. Cars are massively underused capital assets. They're used less than 1 hour a day, 23 hours per day on average. They sit parked, taking up space in our driveways or in our cities. That we put up with such inefficiency reveals just how much we value the services that cars provide. But cars are not the only underused private good. Homes, Wi-Fi bandwidth, office space often also lie underused. And for all of these goods, the advent of network technologies has facilitated the sharing of unused capacity among individuals. Now, car and ride sharing is squarely at the heart of the shared economy, with dozens of operators, both legacy operators and new entrants, offering a wide range of services, including, I think I have Sweden in there as well. And tellingly, a few of these are very well capitalized automakers, rental companies, and innovators, and they offer some of the most popular services. But one thing that all of these services have in common is that they still require a driver behind the wheel. The arrival of highly automated and ultimately fully self-driving cars on our roads could radically change this state of affairs. Moreover, while many car manufacturers take and this is to quote a great song by the Talking Heads for those who remember them, a same as it ever was approach. That is, they expect that we will use highly automated vehicles much as we use cars today. That was not our starting point, and it is not our expectation. Our project was a what-if exercise that sought to understand what might happen if a mobility service based on a fleet of fully shared and fully self-driving vehicles replaced every single car trip and every single bus trip in a mid-sized European city. Now, it is not a transition scenario. We do not explain or explore how this might happen, but we undertook this study to delineate the range of potential outcomes and the scale of these outcomes. We started with a real city, with its street topology and traffic rules. It's a mid-sized European city. We used real data on origins and destinations and the timing of travel. And we used real routes to plot travel based on the shortest time and least detour, considering the rules of the road and the street topology. Now, we modeled two types of shared self-driving vehicle services. One are ride-sharing taxi bots. Unfortunately, that is a trademark name, not by us, so you might not be seeing this name much longer. These taxi bots pick up and drop off passengers along routes that are optimized in real time. Now, this mode implies simultaneous sharing of vehicles. Autobots, sounds a bit like something out of Star Wars, pick up passengers or parties one at a time and deliver them to their next destination before picking up another party or another passenger. This type of operation involves sequential sharing of vehicles. And in both cases, we modeled 3 different classes of vehicle sizes, up to 8 passengers. We accounted for the presence or not of high-capacity public transport. In our base case city, it was a metro system. It could have been another type of high-capacity system, like a bus rapid transit system. In our model, we allocated all those trips that were within a certain radius of the, in this case, metro station to that mode. We assumed that all trips taken by bus and all trips taken by car were taken by one of these 2 configurations of shared self-driving vehicles. And we assumed that trips, pedestrian trips, walking trips of less than 1 kilometer remained as walking trips. We didn't model the impacts on bicycle usage because this city, and if you need to know, it's Lisbon, does not have a great deal of cycling due to the topography in its center. Now, we looked at these impacts over the course of the day, so over 24 hours, and we also looked at the impacts at peak hours, because peak hours, rush hours, are the real constraining factor in how the system can operate. And crucially, we modeled all trips in the simulation so they were started with no more than a 5-minute delay on the base case trip, and that each trip's duration did not surpass by 20%, capped at 10 minutes, the base case trip, because we individually replicated each trip in the city, and that each trip's length did not surpass the original length by 20%, capped at additional 2 kilometers. And this is what we found. In the case of the ride-sharing taxi bot system, and in the presence of high-capacity public transport, a shared self-driving fleet would deliver the same mobility in our base case, but with only 10% of today's vehicles. That is, you could remove 9 out of 10 vehicles off the streets of this city with the same, almost the same service quality in terms of trip timing. Now, this is a significant effect, but one that is largely consistent with other studies that have been done in New York, in New Jersey, and Ann Arbor, also in Singapore. Now, as I said, the rush hour, peak hour trips are the real constraint. And here again, looking at the ride-sharing scenario with public transport, we could see that you could remove 2 out of every 3 vehicles operating at rush hours. Now, this is for the taxi-bot ride-sharing system. The sequentially shared Autobot system requires more vehicles to serve the same number of trips, but even at peak hours, Autobots could remove nearly half, 44% of all cars traveling today, assuming there is the high-capacity public transport. But even without the metro system, it could remove a quarter of the cars that are already on the streets today. Now, this will have significant repercussions on parking needs and the allocation of public space in the city. In all of the scenarios that we studied, we found that on-street parking could be completely removed, allowing the reallocation of 1.5 million square meters to other uses. Now, this space is equivalent to about 210 football pitches, twice the area of the Vatican. It is a significant amount of space. In fact, it accounts for 20% of the curb-to-curb street space in the city. Freeing up such a significant share of space in the city leads to new and previously unimaginable possibilities. Alternative uses could include expanding public space, like here, the parklets that we see in some cities in North America, but also in Europe, or freeing up space for active transport, for walking, for cycling, or freeing up space for deliveries and remunerated commercial use, until, of course, we have these flying delivery vehicles that we might see. Most cities also devote a considerable amount of off-street space to parking. And we found in the ride-sharing plus public transport scenario that up to 80% of that parking would be superfluous and could be released for other uses. In the most favorable case, that would account for almost 1.2 million meters of space, 170 football pitches for those who are able to calculate that amount of space. This amount of space could be used for other services, for example, logistics distribution centers that could be serviced by self-driving delivery shuttles. Now, in terms of the volume of travel, in terms of the amount of kilometers traveled, it's clear that the type of mobility configurations that we modeled of shared and self-driving vehicles would travel more than today's cars. And this is because they are assumed to replace all bus travel, but especially because of the additional travel required for pickups and drop-offs and repositioning. With high-capacity public transport, distances traveled increased from 6% to 44%, depending on the type of taxi-bot versus auto-bot scenario we're looking at. And at peak hours, travel would also increase by 8% to 54%, respectively, for the same scenarios. Now, these increases in travel may be manageable given the traffic flow efficiencies that we estimate could be realized by fully automatic cars. But in the absence of high-capacity public transport, all bets are off, because travel could nearly double. This would undoubtedly be extremely challenging to manage. Now, we also looked at where on the road network this increase in travel occurs. And we looked at it by different types of roadway classifications, motorways, trunk roads, distributors, and local roads. In terms of occupancy of the road's technical carrying capacity today, in the base case morning peak, we see that all but local roads operate at about 30 to 40% of their capacity. So this is the case today. In the taxi-bot plus high-capacity public transport scenario, much of that increase, you see increases on local roads, so a 31% increase. And in the auto-bot without high-capacity public transport scenario, so this is the scenario where traffic increases the most, we see that traffic on local roads more than doubles. This means that the types of scenarios we modeled would lead to an increase in traffic in parts of the city where significant traffic was largely absent previously. This relative increase in traffic could certainly cause discomfort for those who are living there and lead to a rise in conflicts with pedestrians and with cyclists. Of course, there would likely be beneficial safety impacts, and the environmental impacts associated with increased travel could be managed by looking at different types of technology deployment, hybridized drivetrains, and ultimately electric drivetrains. On that last point, we did model an electric vehicle fleet in these different configurations with fast recharging times and more range, but still having to come offline in order to recharge, and when their range limits were met. And what we found is that from the scenarios that we modeled, you would see only a 2% more increase in travel. So these system efficiency, these impacts of having electric vehicles would not be significant. So what are the key policy takeaways from this exercise? The first is that proactive policies will be needed to ensure that the management and reallocation of newly freed up space is both efficient and purposeful. Without foresight and guidance, especially guidance where necessary, there's a risk that potential benefits will be eroded and lost. That a shared and self-driving fleet gives rise to increased travel is not in and of itself problematic, in all but the most extreme scenarios, as I pointed out. There are many technical ways in which this increase can be managed, and the ways in which the negative impacts from increased travel can be reduced. But the relative increases on certain parts of the network and in certain parts of the city will be more challenging to manage. And this is because the increase in traffic could change the nature of certain residential streets and render travel by active modes less pleasant and therefore less attractive. We scanned existing and planned legislation relating to automated vehicles. And here, of course, regulatory action is underway. But our scan revealed that all initiatives that we found focus on testing, licensing, and operations of vehicles on public roads. To our knowledge, no jurisdiction has taken anticipatory action to change the regulatory framework surrounding some of the likely use cases for fully automated vehicles, like, for example, in providing long-distance road haulage, or shared taxi-like and quasi-public transport-like services. One of the interesting things that we found in this study is that only about 5,000 extra self-driving vehicles could replace every single trip taken, in this case, on the metro system that we were looking at. These extra vehicles would completely obviate the need for a high-capacity public transport system in this mid-sized city. And this would represent significant cost savings. The deployment of self-driving and shared fleets in an urban context will directly compete with the way in which taxi and public transport services are currently organized. There will be labor issues. We already see that happening now. They will be significant, but there is no reason why public transport operators or taxi companies could not take an active role in providing the types of services that we've developed here. It is clear, though, that the governance of transport services, including concession rules and arrangements, will have to adapt. The drastic reduction in the number of cars would significantly impact car manufacturer business models. New service-based business models will develop under these conditions, but it is unclear who will manage these and how they'll be monetized. Under all of our scenarios, vehicles are used much more intensely than before, rising from approximately 50 minutes per day to about 12 hours per day, and rising from about 30 kilometers per day to nearly 200 kilometers per day per vehicle. This increase in use will require different car models that are currently on the market today, but will also induce a shorter turnover time for the fleet, which can help the penetration of potentially cleaner technologies. And finally, of course, I don't mean this literally, but when we undertook this exercise, it required the parsing, calculating, analyzing of a huge amount of data. And in real life, such a system will be both massively data intensive, just as it would produce a prodigious amount of usable data. Mobility as a service cannot exist without near real-time access to a wealth of high velocity and highly personal location data. This data is a source of innovation, but it is also a source of worry, especially as concerns privacy. Our feeling is that location data privacy is an area where sufficient guarantees on trust are not yet in place, and where regulation has yet to ensure an adequate balance between private and public interests. So there, in a nutshell, are some of the big takeaways from this study, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. Yes, indeed. I mean, it seems that what you just showed is kind of redefining the sheer notion of public transport, indeed. That's a quite mind-blowing way of looking at this new settings. Okay, so we have, well, let's say 15 minutes available for exchange and discussion of these. And after having heard all of this self-driving cars, the self-flying aerial vehicles, I guess soon we'll be talking about the self-walking people. I mean, probably. Please. Yes, over there, sir. Please, if you'd be kind enough to just tell us who you are and who you work and where you work. Okay, so the second one will be behind you, please, because, okay, so go on. Please.
Yes, I'm Simon Hampton. I work for Uber. As Sarah omitted to mention when I could buy one of her cars, my question was to Philippe, how dependent is your model on there being nobody sitting in the driver's seat in order to get all of those gains?
Well, the first thing is that this exercise was a timeless exercise, so we don't actually put a date on when we feel this type of system would come into place. And the reason we did that is we're not very confident on setting a date. The exercise was to see what are the type of impacts, the scope of impacts, their magnitude, and try to see if policy makers and authorities who are already thinking ahead about where these changes might lead to changes in their own action every day. So that's why we didn't put a time on it. We just wanted to see what was happening. how dependent is it on having a driver or not? Well, I think that will have a major impact on the cost of providing such a service. I think that in many emerging economies, you in many cases have a system that is almost like this, because one thing you have to be aware of is that in many emerging economies, the sharing economy is much more developed, though informally, than in our own, let's say, OECD economies. So I think in those areas, the cost factor would not be so important. The information management factor, the integration of this information and getting riders with rides combined is a more important element. In OECD economies, I think and I know where you're coming from with that question. I think that the cost factor would be challenging if you have to pay someone to provide the service. But that doesn't mean, as we see already, that these services are developing with drivers.
So I guess number 2 was somewhere there, please. Yes.
Yes, hello. Thorson from the International Federation of Pedestrians. I'm on again. That has been to think about all what you have said, but especially to Philip Christ. It's a very nice city where only users of cars are driving around, really. You know that pedestrians in the cities, also cyclists, will need more of the time in the whole system. The same will happen for bus passengers. And that has not been, as I have seen here, included in the charge of the network. How will we manage that? Because there will be less time for the cars to drive around in the future and more needed for pedestrians, cyclists and bus passengers.
So as far as the impact of such a system on active modes of transport, so walking and cycling, the first thing is that we specifically looked at walking in this case, not so much cycling because of the reasons I explained. And I think that, if memory serves me correctly, about 30% of the trips in this city are walking trips, even with this system. But that's because it's a very dense city center. One of the things that I pointed out is that to our surprise, it wasn't something that we expected. To our surprise, one of the main impacts of this system, as we model it, was to free up a tremendous amount of urban space. And as I pointed out, that space can be reallocated to a number of different uses. And I think that a city that is willing to attract and continue to be competitive and take care of an aging population should invest part of that newly freed up space for better access for pedestrians and for cyclists. So what I have said describes a system where in the city you have a tremendous amount of newly available space. You have fewer vehicles, fewer motorized vehicles operating in that space, but you potentially have the possibility of providing an even better walking environment for those who are currently walking 2 buses and 2 cars. Now, the one caveat I would say is because this is literally door-to-door transport, the walking that people make now, going from their home to a bus stop or from a home to a car park, would be removed. And of course, there are health repercussions about that because walking, as cycling, is an important part of keeping us active and therefore healthy.
Let's turn on this side now. Yes, please, madam.
Hi, I'm Robin Chase. I want to say each one of you guys gave a really fantastic talk. This was a really incredible panel. But indeed, I do have to talk to Philippe. I've been yearning to see what you produced, and that was a fantastic summary. So I just wanted to add one piece to your policy implications, that I love the scenarios you showed, the 3 options, but I would say the 4th is if we have neither shared trips nor shared cars, but have personal ownership of those autonomous vehicles. And so to the policy piece, I would like you to start people to think about what will happen if I own my own autonomous car and I just have it, I think of them as 0 occupancy vehicles. And I think that completely screws every single thing up and takes away all the gains. So in the policy recommendations, I would like to see a higher user fee for 0 occupancy vehicles than ones that do these other things. But that was a terrific study. Thank you.
Thank you. So, who's next? I see somebody over there, please. Oh, please, so Madam, let's go to Madam first. Yes, please.
Erica from Smart Freight Center. My question is, what if, self-autonomous vehicles, they don't get drunk, they don't text, and they don't get tired. But in a case of an accident, who's to blame? And what's the link with the car insurance companies?
So I think the answer to that question is, well, every case differs, right? You know, I'm not a lawyer, but my lawyers would take me to task if I try to, you know, sort of pontificate about a theoretical accident. But I think you'd kind of have the same scenarios you have right now. You know, an accident happens, the data is gathered by the police, and it's heard in court, and case studies develop and precedent develops from those initial cases. So I don't see it as such a big sort of blocker as some people do. You know, I think the courts and the insurance companies have dealt with gradual autonomy being introduced to cars very successfully within the existing legal framework. And there are a number of academics who say, actually, the legal frameworks we have can cope with this. It's not, you don't need new kind of laws of liability to deal with this specific scenario. But I do think it will raise some interesting questions in those court cases about, you know, the responsibilities we give to software and humans, and the relationship between the two. So I think it's a very interesting sort of philosophical and sort of social discussion, but I actually think in practice the courts will manage to resolve those issues.
Can I just add something to that? Because I think, as Sarah said, there will be crashes. There will probably be new types of crashes that we can't fully anticipate. So I think Google's been quite astute, because the vehicle that you've presented here is limited at 45 kilometers an hour. Is that right?
Yeah, 25 miles.
25 miles. So that is a smart risk management approach when you don't know what the outcomes will be. You minimize the consequences of these crashes if they do occur. And so I have to say that's something that generally when we look at road safety, the most important thing is to understand that accidents and crashes will happen always, but to minimize the consequences as much as possible. And during the rollout of these new technologies, when we don't know exactly what crash configurations will occur, you should be, and you are, thinking about minimizing the consequences of the crashes.
Just to complement that, actually, just a couple of weeks ago, I read an article in the Washington Post which was referring to a few accidents having occurred. I believe you mentioned 7 or something like that.
11, we've had 11.
Okay, but saying it's minor ones, and in most of those cases, actually, the self-driving car was hit from behind by a regular one.
Yeah, we were rear-ended in the American terminology most of the time, but none of the 11 was the car at fault. So, you know, even when we were sideswiped, again an American term, you know, it was not the car, it was someone running into us. Nice. But those accidents will happen, people will run into.
Because I'm from São Paulo city, so imagining a metropolitan area with autonomous and non-autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, no, I sort of, you know, on the one hand, we think we can improve road safety, but accidents will happen, and I think it's important for expectations to be managed, because I think that apart from the tragedy of people getting hurt, another great loss would be if society reacted to a crash with a kind of, you know, throwing our hands up and saying we must stop. We can't carry on the development of this technology, because as I said earlier, 3,500 people die every single day on our roads, and no one's protesting. You know, we let it happen, right? And I sort of feel, you know, tragic though one accident would be, we shouldn't lose that big picture as well.
I think on the case of crashes that might happen in these new scenarios, those crashes, the outcome, the decision leading to the final outcome of the crash will be operated by an algorithm. And so there is the question also, how do you understand what is the decision-making process in a loss crash situation? And there may be calls to audit algorithms or put in place random outcomes of these algorithms to try to replicate human action. Because when the human loses control over the outcome of 2 bad outcomes, then that can have some real repercussions in terms of the uptake of the technology.
All right.
Thomas Auri from...
yes, sir. Oh, sorry, please. First, and you after that.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Thomas Auri from Delphi, a car supplier. I'd like to address my question to Ms. Hunter. So you finalized your lecture with some statement that Google knows how to build that car. So does that mean, and I hope you get no troubles with your legal department, as Google will become a car manufacturer?
No. I think that's a definitive answer. So the car that we've manufactured that I showed earlier is a prototype vehicle. That's a car that we've built a limited number of, and we're going to own them. We're going to own them, and we've built them really to learn about what does it take to build a truly self-driving vehicle from the ground up, you know, a bespoke vehicle, if you like, perfectly suited to autonomy with no steering wheel. But we really want to work with partners. You know, we're not interested in going this alone. And that vehicle, we work with Bosch, we work with Continental, we work with Roush. I mean, we work with a whole range of different tier 1 suppliers to make that. And it was an incredibly positive experience for us. So we're talking now to the OEMs about, you know, what's the next stage and in what way do we bring this from where we are now, which is a kind of engineering prototype, to a consumer product. And those conversations are ongoing. So no definitive answers, but we're very keen to work with other people on this.
So please, yeah.
World. So I'll try again. Peter Miller, Eto World. I'm interested about the timing of this because there seem to be, there's the opportunity of driverless cars, and we hear different predictions as to how long it will be till they're available. But information technology is also creating I think, a crisis of safety of distraction driving, where now using mobile technology is more dangerous and causes more accidents than drink driving and some of the more traditional ways of not controlling a motor vehicle. And there was an article recently about the implications of having a watch on your wrist that taps your wrist at the wrong moment to tell you about some football scores or something. So can we just sort of talk about how distraction driving, what the future of that is likely to be, and whether autonomous driving will come in time to take away that problem?
Yeah, I think it is a huge problem. And one of the reasons we decided to build a truly autonomous vehicle is because we saw how hard it is to keep people engaged in the driving experience when they're not actually doing the driving. You know, us humans, we're terrible at being distracted. And I put myself in that category as much as anyone else. I know that all the other auto manufacturers are looking very carefully at how you can do that. I don't think anyone in the industry is not taking it seriously. But at the same time, you know, we don't believe that self-driving vehicles will be the only mobility solution on the road. You know, we're very excited about it, but I do think there's a role for other transportation modes, public transport, bikes, and owned cars as well. So I think that problem will remain even if we bring a car to market in the next few years, you know, however long that is, you're still going to have cars on the road that require a driver. And so solutions have to come. I mean, I know Android, our software platform, is working with OEMs at that sort of solution. How do you sort of embed the car with enough smart software that you don't have to constantly engage with it and get distracted? So I think there are some definite innovations happening. But yes, I don't think we're going to be able to solve it from a self-driving car perspective.
So Sarah in the front row, yeah. Yeah. Good.
I understand that the vehicles don't have to be perfect, they just have to be better than us, which obviously is difficult, especially in the South African context. We have very high debt levels. My question is, are you seeing unions, are you seeing big labour organisations that are worried about job losses for truck drivers, for taxi drivers, and do you think that economies will inevitably prevail?
No, I think Uber is doing very well at taking on those debates right now. We haven't been approached by unions talking about the impact of self-driving vehicles on their jobs. I mean, I think, you know, for time immemorial, you know, technology has you know, replaced some jobs and other jobs have been created. I don't think this is a particularly new trend. And, you know, self-driving cars, you know, yes, potentially it could replace some of the taxi driver jobs, but it can create new jobs as well. You know, we have a whole fleet of people who test drive our vehicles. And that job never existed before. You know, when we tried to recruit people for it, we didn't know where to go. So we put adverts in the local newspaper saying drivers wanted for Google. And these, you know, guys came and said, hello, I'm quite a good driver. And we've invented a whole training program for them, you know, where they are now amazing drivers, even though the irony being that they don't actually have to drive in theory. But nevertheless, you know, and that's a whole new job that never existed before. So I think we shouldn't get too sort of panicked about this job replacement phenomena, because history shows that, you know, everyone still has jobs and technology has progressed as well.
But it is something that we know will happen. And so from a transport authority perspective, or generally from a government perspective, it would be wrong to ignore those. And it's something that will have to be managed. And so anticipating that is quite important.
Well, okay, thank you all. I guess transport is all about on-time delivery, and it's about time, I guess, to bring this discussion to closure. So thank you all. I suggest another round of applause for all our presenters. Thank you so much. And I wish you all another very exciting day at the ITF.
And just a quick reminder, for those of you who are interested in the shared economy, I would go to the ITF, no, it's tomorrow morning at the ITF Cafe. You can talk to Robin Chase all about it.
Well done.